Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I am your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And welcome to another author interview today. Now, my guest today lives in Washington with his wife and two sons, along with Macy the dog, Winston the cat, and Merry Pippin the finches. He's the author of the Dissonance series, several business books on multimedia production, penned under a pseudonym, and a previous fictional novel called The Omega Room. In second grade, he was tasked with writing a creative assignment, a fictional book. Thus, The Electric Boy was born, a simple novella full of intrigue, fantasy, and 7-year-old wits that electrified his desire to write. From then on, he became a creative soul who desired to create. He enjoys the arts, media, music, performing, poetry, and being a father. In his lifetime, he has been an author, voiceover artist, wedding videographer, stage performer, musician, producer, rock pop artist, executive assistant, and more. His diverse lifestyle experiences give him a unique approach to business, life, ministry, faith, and entertainment. His favorite authors are J.R.R. Tolkien, but he enjoys Suzanne Collins, James S.A. Corey, Mary Lou, Madeleine L'Engle, I probably butchered that name, C.S. Lewis, and of course, Stephen King. He has always had a passion for storytelling, and to tell us more about that and more, let's give a huge round of applause to a first-timer here on the channel, Mr. Aaron Ryan. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to clarify, the author is Suzanne Collins of the Hunger Games, not Susan Collins, the U.S. Senator, just to be clear.
Okay, Suzanne Collins. I know. Oh, yeah, that is Suzanne Collins. I don't know why I said Susan for some reason.
Not that I'm not a fan of, the Senate and government in general, but, whatever.
All right. Well, Aaron, it is great to have you on the show. And is there anything else you would like to add on into your bio? I think it pretty much covered everything, but is there anything else you would like to add on to it?
Well, I dodge, I weave, I frolic, and my bills are all paid. No, I'm actually I'm happy to be here. I always love opportunities to talk about the books. So this is actually the trilogy that has been published so far. The third one is coming next Saturday, May 18th, and it is about almost double the size of one of these books.
Ooh, okay.
The finale, called Dissonance Volume 3 Renegade, and it is epic in every way. I did an incredible amount of research on it, militarily, governmentally. They're finally fighting back against the Gorgons, and it's just turned out way better than I could have possibly hoped for. So super excited.
Awesome. So let's just dive right on in. So in your bio, you've been a very creative person for a very, very long time. 7 years old, you wrote your first novella, and then just snowballed into where you are right now. Yeah. But what moment would you say in your life really was your aha moment that you wanted to pursue being an author? What sparked that?
That's a great question. So that actually happened long ago. I actually, you're right. I started that book. It was basically a novella in second grade. It was, so elementary, real monosyllabic words, the cat, blah, blah, blah. And I loved it. But in probably the early 90s, I started writing The Omega Room. I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go with the book. I just knew that I wanted to write. However, it wasn't the right, see what I did there, time for me to actually continue writing. I had to, I was a young kid, no money, and had to pursue an actual job.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that. I think I got waylaid for a while, but when I got into voiceovers in the early 90s, I knew that I wanted to write in tandem. So I was writing blogs. I wrote up to 300 blogs. I wrote 6 voiceover books on business development, and you can see the studio behind me. And nice. It wasn't fiction, but I've always had a desire to return back to fiction. So the long answer / is probably the early 90s when I just kind of exploded creatively, and it just went
Wow.
like this from there.
Dang. And forgetting from about, you've been like everywhere. You're truly the definition of a jack of all trades. You have done everything. Some would find it hard to sort of manage all that as well as being an author and a parent. But somehow, Aaron, you managed to do it all. And speaking of your book, what can you tell us about the series, especially the very first book?
Yeah. Well, being a parent is a job in and of itself. You're absolutely right. So that's actually the evening hours, though. The kids are, away in preschool or school. I have an 8 and an almost 5-year-old, and they are you can see them kind of faintly in the sun back there.
Yeah.
I swear those are mine, not just random. Um, you can download pictures of anybody's kids on the internet, just put them in a frame, and hey, those are my kids. But they are my kids. So that's the parenting takes place all day. It never stops. But the engagement and being with them, that's evening time or afternoon when they come home from school. Before that, I'm in here. This is my office, and I'm doing voiceovers, and I'm doing books, and I got kind of a wild hair last year to return to music. That was May. I started and I produced several CDs last year and resurrected old CDs, but it became really apparent really quick that it was going to be incredibly expensive to pursue music. I'm also a Christian, totally niche market, as opposed to going in and doing like cover band stuff. So very, very niche. And it was not happening. So I kissed that away, said, bye-bye, thank you for your time. And I said, what can I do that I know how to do well, and that that compels me, that gives me great fundamental satisfaction of creating? And it was like, well, of course I need to return to authoring. So this book I started November 21st last year, and I finished writing December 16th. So it took me 3 weeks to pump this out. I like to joke that it burst out of me like an alien queen, is what I like to joke. The story just kind of told itself, but I'm much more of a pantser when you write. It's organic. You fly by the seat of your pants. And as it developed, there was such a subtle undercurrent of governmental frustration and you know um, people interfering with the protagonist's plans. He just wants to get rid of these guys. These are the aliens. But he's finding that he's fighting two battles on multiple fronts. So it became really much more complex than I actually had originally intended. And it turned out well. Published it January 1st, and it's doing well. And it's being converted into a screenplay right now.
Wow.
Pitching to Netflix and Paramount and Amazon Prime. I'm really excited.
Wow. Congratulations. That is huge. I mean, again, 3 weeks to complete, like, not just like one book, but also continue the process to make this rest of the series. I mean, that is an incredible achievement, Aaron. Congratulations.
Thank you. Each successive book took a little bit longer to write because, by virtue of the fact that they're growing more complex, there's more story to be told, there's interweaving lines, there's more character development. All of those things, tend to prolong the writing process, but there's also editing that just takes a lot more painstaking time to make sure you've got everything all locked in. The third book, I did an incredible amount of research and talked to a 35-year retired captain of an aircraft carrier, a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, 2 senior airmen in the Air Force, an Army chopper pilot, and gleaned all this info just because I wanted it to be authentic and have verisimilitude in the series. So
Wow.
yeah.
So let's actually dive back. Sorry. Let's dive back in time to when you penned the story for the first time, when you finally got the idea and you're writing it down on your computer, or I don't know if you may have done the notes like on a piece of pad or however you did it. But when you created or started creating this story, what was the initial desire you wanted to satisfy for your future readers?
The number one desire was for me, was for myself. I need to create. I have a profound innate need to create. And so that was the aching hole that was left from trying to create music. And I did. It just didn't go anywhere. I mean, it was so hard to be able to get inroads into any venues to perform it. And believe me, I did the marketing. So I had that profound, like, innate need to create. So that was, you know, I guess what was left aching in me. I had to start writing the book. For the readers themselves, I just wanted to write something that was compelling. Of course, you obviously want to go the Oscar Wilde route and say, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. I wanted to write something new. I did come up with an initial, idea, but the aliens were more like, and they were originally called druids because I wasn't sure where I was going.
Right.
They were based loosely off of a fusing of Dementors and meeting Nazgul, maybe.
Ooh, okay.
But I didn't want to do, Rowling or Tolkien a ripoff. I didn't want to imitate.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to kind of backtrack and go, what are these things? Why are they here? And then, coming up with a backstory of when they came, why they came, what they're going to do. The story just grew and grew, and just, letting it tell itself, it became monstrous. I mean, no pun intended.
Mm. Dang. All right. Then, when you were writing this story, and as you said, you want to write this for initially yourself because you are a very creative person. You want to fill that initial void. And so, when you finish the first draft of it before you send it to an editor or something like that, what was the promise you were making with this story and hopefully this series?
The promise is that it would be different. It is sci-fi, number one, but sci-fi still, I think, in so many people's minds, tends to invoke images of a squeaky clean future like the USS Enterprise, boldly going where no man has gone before, visiting other planets, but you have all of your stuff together. You're well equipped. You've got laser guns. This is not the case. My favorite movie of all time is Aliens, James Cameron's Aliens, and it always will be. I mean, I'll be really surprised if anything ever knocks it from its perch. I love Lord of the Rings, favorite work of fiction, but Aliens is gritty. It's dirt.
Mm-hmm.
It's attainable because it's dirty. The guys don't have it all together. It's, they're just trying to do their job, but they are fighting people, and forces working against them, and they're being overpowered by a species that is, you're ill matched.
Right.
So I knew that I wanted something like that. Granted, I can't put acid for blood in these things. Yeah, I can't have them, have these long ovular heads. But I wanted to create a world that was not too far into the future where things would suggest that they should be squeaky clean. Close. The invasion happens 2 years from now, 2026. The book,
Ooh.
the book is set in 2042, 16 years after the invasion. So it's not too far where you kind of get removed from reality.
Oh, okay. So it's one of those sci-fi stories where it starts off in like our perceived reality in the current timeline, but then it jumps forward into this world's future, which is not so far into the future. As you said, it's only a few years, 16 years, but it's still different to where it is the Earth we know, but it's not the Earth that was back in 2026.
Correct. It's actually the reverse. So the book starts in 2042, and the character, the protagonist, who is Lieutenant or Sergeant Cameron Shipley, he is he falls into dreams, and he's dreaming back of the way things were and remembering when the invasion happened 16 years prior. But Earth, 16 years later, granted, 85% of humanity has been killed off by these things.
Oh, dang.
That's, it's basically 4 out of 5 people that are now gone. The rest of humanity is eking out an existence in the shadows. Earth is overgrown. Things are falling out of maintenance. They're falling into disrepair. Nuclear reactors have melted down. Earth is overgrown by ivy and weeds, and animals have roamed the streets. However, Animals are a sizable moving object that is consumable as well. So the Gorgons have killed them off too. It's just Earth is a ghost town in 2042.
Wow. I can imagine, as you said, crafting that very complex story definitely takes a lot of time, a lot of re-edits, and a lot of planning to make sure you really hit the nail on the mark that this is the story that I want to tell. And now, fast forwarding in the process, you've already gotten it edited, you got the cover artists on board, they've given you the cover that you want to use as the selling point for your book and for the rest of the series, and you put it out there. What was the initial feedback like with the first book? Were the reviews positive, negative, mixed? And bonus question, is there a review that sticks out to you?
Yeah, yes, and yes. So the reviews have been largely overwhelmingly positive for all of the books. I've had beta readers only for volume 3, but volume 2 and 1 have a 4.5, 4.6 or higher rating on Kindle. That's wonderful to me. That's going to change. You can't please everyone, and I think the sooner you stop trying to do that, the more sane you'll stay. You can't please everyone. Your book isn't going to appeal to 100% of humanity. The other side of it, though, is that some of those reviews just really floored and impressed and flattered me so deeply. The one that I remember the most, that went straight to my heart, is actually from a friend who knows me.
Oh,
She read the book. She doesn't read sci-fi, but she read it because she wanted to, buy it and support me. And she forgot who she forgot who wrote it as she was reading. That's a wonderful testament to losing yourself in the story. So if the story can become so immersive and can become so compelling that you are lost in it and you actually forget the author, then I've done my job, because I want to write a good story that you can lose yourself in.
and would you say that that has validated your promise with this series going forward, that you are going to get lost in this new universe?
Yeah, I mean, some of those reviews say couldn't put the book down, and there's no higher praise than that. You have to keep going. Even if you're at the end of a chapter, it's what's going to happen next? Oh my God, goodness, Lord, what's eek? And you get scared for the characters that you find so tangible, real, attainable, like they're sitting right next to you in life. And that's really the mark of any successful book, I think, is where a person just can't put it down. So to get those kind of reviews has been super high praise.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. That, I think, is like the ultimate goal for any author, is that the reader enjoys the book, they get lost in the story. It takes them out of reality, if just for like maybe 30 minutes, maybe a few hours. That's the ultimate goal. And that comes from like years of honing your craft, honing your voice as an author. Because I've always said this on the show, and I firmly believe it, being an author is a very lonely business. You spend hours and hours on a project, if not years, and you don't know it's going to connect with your audience. You don't know it's going to connect with your readers. And when you put it out there on the digital stage, there's always that voice of imposter syndrome in the back of your mind, nagging you and just contradicting everything that you're doing. And I want to ask you, Aaron, have you ever had those moments of imposter syndrome? And what has disciplined you to continue writing, because you know that this is something that you need to do?
So there's two mantras. The answer to the question, no, I've never had imposter syndrome. I completely sympathize with those who have, because I get it. As a voiceover artist, I've worked with countless individuals as a voiceover business coach who struggle with that very thing. Who am I to be in this studio and be granted the voice of United Healthcare, or Microsoft or Amazon or Uber or whoever, Wrangler, Cadillac? Who am I? I understand that. I've never suffered from that. I've always been intentional. I've always been my wife likes to joke that my middle name is, if anything is worth doing, it's worth overdoing. and you kind of go big or go home. I firmly believe, not just in what I've written in different works, but I firmly believe in this trilogy. It has become so much bigger than me, and I'm so grateful for that. So the mantras that I live by, that really I think have helped to do battle against any kind of potential emergence of imposter syndrome, are: one, from a movie I like to pretend does not exist, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon Jinn says to a young Anakin Skywalker, "Your focus determines your reality."
Mm.
That was gold on the part of George Lucas. Gold, with a capital G. I love that phrase. Your focus determines your reality. My focus is becoming and staying a best-selling author, providing for my family by authoring and the sale of my books. The other one, though, this is just kind of ties into the Oscar Wilde phrase that I shared earlier, that really, hopefully, will just help people deal with their sanity. You publish a book, you're checking the stats, you're refreshing,
Mm-hmm.
and are people buying it? And I got a notification somebody bought it, and all this perceived affirmation that you get. Well, just remember my other mantra: someone's endorsement of what you've written, or lack thereof, has very little to do with your trajectory. So if you are making your focus your reality, you want to be an author, you'll be a successful author. If you continue to put the naysayers aside, you're going to get bad reviews. It's
Yes.
a scientific inevitability. Put those naysayers aside, laser beam focus, tunnel vision focus on your trajectory. Someone's endorsement of you won't have anything to do with it. Someone's lack of endorsement of you won't have anything to do with it. You're going there.
100% agree. Absolutely. And that kind of leads into this section of the interview, which I call the business side of being an author, which I think every indie author needs to learn. And I'm still learning this myself. So let's jump into the first question. So, Aaron, when you decided that you want to publish your first book and the rest of the books in this series, did you want to go the self-publishing route, or did you research and try to potentially send your books to a traditional publishing house with the query letters, with the pitches and everything?
Yeah, I was on Query Tracker, and I sent it to, I don't know, maybe under 40 or 50 publishers. I have self-published everything I've written, so that comes second nature to me. It's not daunting to me at all. You talked about cover designers earlier. These are my designs. So I had a person
wow.
I had a person who designed these, but I did the cover layout of everything else, and a person who designed this guy. But I did the layout of everything and the layout of the backs with the synopses and blah, blah, blah. And, got Bowker's, my identifiers for the ISBN codes. And I just am very self-motivated that way. I have run a business since 3, but formally since 2003. And I like to have my hands in every pot and do that my way. So self-publishing, I call all the shots. I control everything. I can do it a lot quicker than a traditional publisher would. So my, volume 1 was already published. Self-published. Here I approach a publisher and they're going, we don't really take things that are self-published. And I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I have had a few people consider it, though, just based on the merits of the description and the title and the cover. You judge a book by its cover. So a few people have considered it.
And that's actually, really, really true, because I had a previous guest on the show a year ago, and she brought about that self-publishing is now it's huge. It's now on par with traditional publishing. But 10 years ago, I'm not saying it wasn't the case. Everyone had this sort of stigma that self-publishing didn't have this professional feel. It was cheap. But as you've shown, that cover is amazing. And as you say, we judge a book by its cover. And if no one didn't know any better, they would assume that was a traditionally published book from like Angry Robots, Tor, or some of the other ones. But it's really, really incredible. And then going back to what you said, that your hand is in every pocket for self-publishing, that is one of the biggest benefits. But I definitely think it's probably the one thing that a lot of new authors don't really take in consideration, that you are your own businessman, your own
Mhm.
businesswoman. You are hiring the editors. You are hiring the cover artists. You have to market the heck out of your book. And that, I think, is the hugest thing that a lot of indie authors struggle. And I know I'm still struggling with that. My first two books, I didn't market it as well. And my third book, which I'm still finishing up, I'm doing everything I can to spread the word.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important, which then leads into another topic, which is the audience. Are you writing for? So, Aaron, in your opinion, how important is it for new authors to really understand their audience and who they're writing to? Because if you want to go broad, you may have a good chance of getting a lot of readers, depending. Or if you want to specifically target the hardcore sci-fi or thriller readers, you're going to hit a very niche audience. So I was wondering if you can provide your own thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'm just actually right now reading and kind of going through and revamping my descriptions on my books from an article on Scribe Media that is basically 19 ways to increase exposure, on your book, and how to do it right. And one of the things is just it's not just people judge the book by the cover. Yes, you want to get in the right category. Yes, right target audience, but you got to get your description right. So I've been working on my description. So I've found a lot of success, however, in the young adults market. If you want to pursue, if I, personalizing it, wanted to pursue a larger sci-fi market, like a Dean Koontz market, um, he's cornered the market. So has Tolkien's cornered fantasy. J.R.R. Rowling J.K. Rowling has covered fantasy. Dystopian, that's Suzanne Collins. Marie Lu, is high up there as well. I have a tendency to buck the system a little bit and just do what I feel most comfortable with regardless of statistics. Not to use the word irregardless, uh, which means with full regard to. Free lesson of the day. I um I think that my market is it's fair to say that it is young adult. Young adult tends to read up anyway. So they're not going to be reading elementary fiction. They're not going to be reading anything that is, timid and tame and doesn't push the envelope. They tend to read up. Studies have shown that. So my market is young adult sci-fi market. Now, that doesn't mean that it's to the exclusion of the adult sci-fi market, because it's still there if you search for the right keywords, and alien invasion, post-apocalyptic, military thriller, you'll find it. But and that's also part of the genius of marketing that you have to master when in self.
Hmm.
But I feel comfortable that my market is young adults sci-fi. They'll read up, and then sometimes the adults read down. Not that this is written on a lower intellect level at all. Um, there are themes in here that young adults and adults can definitely relate to. The concept of justice versus revenge
Right.
permeates the whole book, permeates the entire trilogy, rather.
Wow. And kind of like an add-on to that little tangent, in your opinion, what is young adult fiction? Because I've had a lot of authors just recently who specialize in young adult fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, and it's sort of like, for them, it's like a balancing act where you don't want to be too adult, too graphic with your words, or talk about themes that maybe the reader will not understand. But you also don't want to downplay the reader and, not take into consideration their intelligence.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to patronize or condescend to them. I think that we don't give people the benefit of the doubt anyway. Or as much as we should, I should say. When I write, um, granted, I know what I'm talking about. If it's a military concept, I haven't served in the military, so I need to do research and talk to someone who knows what they're talking about, and then I'll know what they're talking about. However, that doesn't mean that I can simply go, okay, got it, and write it, almost word for word what they've said and expect them to understand them.
Right.
So there is a little bit of exposition that needs to be done. It's never, you want to be really wary of info dumping, obviously. But you can find, we're creative writers. You
Mm-hmm.
can find a creative way to say, okay, so these guys understand this. How can I make these guys understand that, having never served in the military? And then, it's a matter of exploration from there. But isn't that what we do as we thread our way through our entire novel? Just explain it without condescending.
That is very true. And that is like perfectly said. And then sort of leading into this, with your second book now out, do you have a better idea of who your readers are as opposed to when you just started with this series?
No, not necessarily. I think that the numbers will speak for themselves. I mean, just because there are no demographics that accompany sales reports, really. Also, I think that I'd venture to say that most self-published authors through KDP, Ingram Spark, Draft2 Digital, wherever you go, Kobo, most of them will fall into the trap of, I've got to get it in the right category. Well, Kindle will change those categories arbitrarily all the time. If you've been on Kindle and you've got works published on there, you've seen that, and you'll select these three because they're absolutely fitting for your trilogy. And then when it's published, you see these three, and you're going, what? Maybe two of them are the ones that you picked, and a third one is like, I didn't put that category. What's going on? And we put too much stock in that. People are going to search for keywords. People are going to find your book via keywords. I don't know why I changed from via to via, maybe to sound more austere. They're going to find your book via keywords that you've programmed and keywords that are embedded into your description. That's just how it works. KDP and Amazon is a search engine. I mean, like Google, you're just searching for a specific product. So I think I roundabout answered your question. I don't know exactly, but I'm not so much concerned about that. I just want to put out good works that people will sell. And who knows? Maybe it's an adult who's buying it for a kid, or a kid who's buying it for an adult.
And that kind of leads into another important question, Aaron, when it comes to creating work for our audience. Now, you've mentioned before in the interview that when you wrote this story and writing the second book and writing the third book, you wrote this for you because you wanted to do this. And when it comes to marketing, especially when it comes to trends that happen in the book world, every little thing is going to attract new people. And it's like, oh, this is happening. I got to write for this. Or, oh, this is coming. I need to write for this.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how important is it for an author to recognize the trends, but not be caught up in the sheer awe of it? And I ask this because the big danger when writing for trends, and I've talked with a lot of authors on this, is that if you can do it right, you're going to hit the market. If you don't, you're going to write something that's not authentic, that's not you, and it's going to be a 180 of what you've written. And when you finally write for that trend, it's automatically gone, and you just missed the curve. So could you provide more insight into that and your own thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, it becomes dated. When you target a trend, you're instantly dated by the time you publish it. You're instantly obsolete. So trends come and go. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. This trend will return. We just don't know when. So bell bottoms come back, Princess Leia, cinnamon roll buns come back. And it just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. The weather of the world and all that stuff. So what I did do, and I really wanted to I love the word verisimilitude. I want you to read it and feel like Tolkien is a master of this. You feel like you are there, or you feel like Middle Earth is there, right? Or was there at
Right.
some point. it's so authentically real to you and tangible. And I really strove for that with with authoring these books in this trilogy. So I did incorporate things like, it's set in 2026, and there are reflections for people around that time, and I'm actually closer to it right now, writing the prequel to this trilogy that is, excuse me, set in 2026. So they are reflecting on the Gaza war of 23-24. They're reflecting on the Ukraine-Russia war of 22-24. And those are in the prequel because they're very close to that time frame. That's gritty reality. That,
Mm.
that's not trend. That's grounding it in reality. And that's where I think I probably differ. The further away you get, the more things drift into memory. So
Okay.
how many books, I guess I should say, from like 2026 would cite John F. Kennedy's assassination? That happened, I'm not good at math, but what, 60 years ago? That was a long time ago. 9/11 is becoming a long time ago. It's only, 23 years ago. But ultimately, I tried to ground my stories in reality. And here's another way I loved doing this. My characters were threading the streets of Clarksville, and I was looking at Google's aerial map of the road. So real roads are in there. They go into a real church, Madison Street United Methodist. They hit a subway that is right there on the map.
Mm.
They go to Mammoth Cave in Volume 2, which is an actual national park, an attraction. So I tried to drench it in, like, you could walk the very same streets that these protagonists walked.
Wow. That's actually really, really nice, and a really nice sort of spin to it. And sort of like the last question, which I think you may have touched onto it in the beginning, which is, a lot of the authors that we read, and of course that you mentioned, J.R.R. Tolkien, Suzanne Collins, J.R.R. Tolkien, J.K. Rowling, all those have been huge and really influential in your writing process and how you approach writing as an author to find your authorial voice. And a lot of people have talked about this. They say that if you're writing for a specific fantasy or specific genre, it's best to read stories or authors who specialize in that field. And I was wondering if you could provide your own thoughts on it and to think, is it true that it's probably a good research tool to see what the other people have written about in that genre?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're in danger of copying, and you have to be aware of that. That's always
Mm-hmm.
going to be a danger. I, however, am much more influenced by movies. So I I remember prior to going into writing number one with this overgrown world, well, I had just seen I Am Legend again, and the virus wipes out. It was rabies or whatever it was, wiped out everyone. And here's the lone protagonist, Will Smith, threading his way through New York, and there's weeds growing up everywhere. There's a lion roaming the streets. So I was more impacted, I think, visually by that, and that's thusly I wrote these books kind of along the lines of a screenplay. Um, so I think it lends itself very well to a screenplay. But yes, as long as you don't copy. I, however, I will read Lord of the Rings over and over and over and over and over and over and over until Jesus returns. Even though it's not sci-fi, it's the definitive work of creative fiction that I have ever read, bar none.
Mm.
And it is the first work of creativity that I remember that really inspired me in my youth to become a creator. So I'll go back to that, and I'll fall on that sword way before I'll go to James S.A. Corey, before I go to Marie Lu, before I go to anything that's Dean Koontz. Yes and no. That help?
That's actually perfect. And I've come on lines with the same thing. The author that really got me into writing, and for me, is definitely Brian Jacques. For those who don't know who Brian Jacques is, he is or he was the author of the Redwall series, or for me growing up, the kid version of Game of Thrones that you could read before you could buy Game of Thrones. And that world was just simply incredible. And as I've grown older, my expansion has also increased from Bernard Cromwell, Alan Smale, Valerio Manfredi, and so many other authors. And just like you, Aaron, I'm also inspired by movies. On my phone, sometimes I will just put on movie battle scenes and just listen to the noise and just imagine it in my head, because I love to describe battle scenes. I love doing that. It's so much fun.
I have an iMac right here, and it, aside from its original duty was to sync all of our phones and iPads when you had to plug in to sync, back in those days. I think it was in the year 2026, 16 years ago. But right now it's, it's for communication, it's for whatever else it's for. But it's always playing a playlist of movie soundtracks. So I've got John Williams, Yo-Yo Ma, John Debney, Hans Zimmer, Sean Paul, James Horner, and it just goes down this really long list back to back to back alphabetically, and that's creatively stimulating. So on the note of reading genre appropriate works as creative fodder for your own, I think you don't have to do that. Just anything that gets your creative juices flowing.
Definitely. And sort of like a little add on to that before to the next question, or the final question of the business side. A thing I always used to say was writers are liars, cheaters, and thieves. We make stuff up, we cheat people at time, and we're always stealing from other authors, because 9 times out of 10, the same story, the same archetype characters has been said over and over again. Now, that's to say you don't outright steal the plot from another story, but just like the hero's quest or the revenge story or the invasion storyline, that has all been told numerous times, but it's the uniqueness of each story is important and to be respected. And I think that ties in perfectly to the next question, which, okay, context for this question, Aaron, this is a big one, so brace yourself. So a while ago, well, not a while ago, a year ago, I had a guest on the show. Her name was Natalie Wright. She's author of Season of the Dragon. When I spoke with her, she told me that her book was her 7th book. When I met her at the LA Festival of Books, I was under the impression that was her first book. No, it was her 7th. And she told me that she struggled for 6 books until she really hit the nail on the coffin for the 7th book. And then she gave me a pearl of wisdom that I am now realizing is really important, and I think every author should realize. And that pearl of wisdom is the biggest lie a new author can believe is that their debut book is going to be the start of their legacy. Now, 9 times out of 10, or there's a 50-50 chance that could go either way. On the plus side, your debut novel could skyrocket and be the New York Times best-selling. It could get everything. It could get adaptations for every other media, from games, TV shows, films, etc. You name it, audiobooks, licensed action figures, whatever. But on the off chance, your book could just have its rise and then plummet. Your readership could get to a certain number and just stagnant for like many years. But she also made a point that even if that side does happen, that should not deter you from writing. If you're passionate about writing, you should continue doing it. And when you finally write that book that really starts your legacy, you can tell your audience saying, hey, if you like this book, you should see my others to see where I've grown from. And I was wondering, Aaron, if you believe in that there is no guarantee that your debut book is going to be the start of your legacy, but it should not deter you from writing if writing is truly one's passion.
Yeah. I'm going to just hold this up here because this is what I shared earlier. This is that motto: someone's endorsement of you or lack thereof has very little to do with your trajectory. So
nice.
I had this encased in a glass thingy. because it was so important to me. So yeah, you have, I think, a horde of authors out there that are newbies that are starting out, and this book, this very one, my very first one, is going to have a meteoric rise, and everyone is going to hail me as the quintessential author. They're all going to fall in love with this story, and there will be peace, world peace. It doesn't happen for everyone. There's maybe one in a billion, million, trillion that might happen to. Either way, do you write for you? That's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
You write for you. Can I get upset if I haven't sold a book on a single day? Yeah, it's frustrating because it's like, come on, I'm doing all this marketing and whatever. But am I satisfied with what I wrote? Do I know it's a good story? Yeah. And I have to believe that there is, I'm not a big proponent of The Secret, that Oprah thing from many years ago, The Secret, the vibes that you're putting out in the universe, or karma and all that. But I do believe, again, that the more I focus on this, the more it starts to come into my reality. My
Right.
focus determines my reality. Doesn't matter if it's your focus or not. It's my focus, and that's what determines my reality.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said, Aaron. And we're just almost nearing the end of this interview. So the last few questions I'm going to ask you, I'm going to combine two of them into one. So looking back on where you are right now in your life, you have first books out, second books out, and you're hard at work with the third one. You have potentially the opportunity to adapt your series of first book into a screenplay, which that is a huge accomplishment for any author. All of this stuff, all the hard work that you've put into it. Looking back, who would you say have been your biggest supporters on this journey with you? And have you ever gotten a sense of validation from fellow indie authors? And I ask this question because it's one thing to join an industry, to join a field, and bring all the knowledge you've learned and show everyone what you can do. And another thing entirely, when your peers recognize it, they see your work and they give credit where credit is due.
Yeah. Well, to receive um, an invite to have my book be considered for turning into a screenplay, that was a huge vote of confidence that I'll never be able to thank properly. So Alan Roth, screenwriter with Act Two Media, is working on it. We've got our third, I think, or fourth official brouhaha tomorrow, and he's working on the screenplay as we speak. And he made no promises. I love that about him. He made no promises. He said, will they take it and option it? No promises. Will someone read it? Absolutely, because there is good story here. And so for that, I'm incredibly grateful. My wife is, behind every successful man is a successful woman. I love that phrase. My wife is my backbone. She's been hugely supportive of my work. She's been incredibly affirming of the whole pursuit. And I say that because I just had a talk with her yesterday. I've got, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 trade shows booked this summer where I'm going to have the 10 by 10 booth and the banner and the table and the books and the spin wheel and all of that stuff set out. And that's time away from her and my boys for hours on end, maybe days on end, several weekends this summer. But she believes in it and she believes in the story. She's not a sci-fi reader and she loved it. And I'm really grateful for that, her honesty there. So my wife, Alan Roth, lots of friends who have supported. I've got a great friend named Vance who's listening to the audiobook and constantly has feedback to chime in on and say, dude, wow. And that's music to my ears. That just tells me that you like it.
Awesome. And sort of like the second to last question before the final question, Aaron, looking back with everything, your life, how it's changed by being an author, by pursuing your passion, have you ever thought in your own private moments how your life could be vastly different if you were not an author?
Well, my life is vastly different right now as a voiceover artist and author. I am finding my voiceover career has been for several years, but really took flight in 2016, and it's starting to go like this. My career is starting to go like this, whereas my authoring career is coming back into full swing. A lot of things have eroded my voiceover career over the past few years. AI, number one, is the strongest culprit. The SAG-AFTRA strike, underbidding colleagues, lowballing clients, the economy. A lot of things have harmed the voiceover career for everyone en masse. Um, I think that, however, has paved the way resource-wise for me to invest all of the monies that I've invested in advertising and promotions for the book. I think I'd be a very sad person if I wasn't creating. Uh,
Hmm.
if I had not, if this idea for this story in particular had not germinated in my mind in November of last year, I'd be I'd be pretty sad. I'm so grateful for this story. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that perfectly answers it. And now arriving at the final question, Aaron, with everything you've learned about being an author, everything you've experienced, trial and error, obstacles, everything, life, what is your word of wisdom to future authors out there who want to get their foot in the door into this business, into this industry?
Watch the watch the Rocky clip from Rocky Balboa when Rocky is outside his own pizza restaurant or Italian restaurant talking with his son. That scene where he's trying to talk some sense into his son. He's saying life isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Take the hits and keep moving forward. I love that scene. I didn't cry during it. Um, it's a crybaby scene. It's so inspiring. It's not how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit. Negative reviews, lack of endorsement, your family and friends not supporting you, your book not getting picked up by a publisher, an agent saying no thanks, whatever. Life's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's the most important thing.
Beautifully said, beautifully spoken, and a perfect way to end this amazing author interview. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for my third author interview in a row. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest, Mr. Aaron Ryan, for joining us today. Now, Aaron, thank you for coming on the show. Where can people find and engage with you to know more about yourself, about the books, about your other careers, and where can they find Dissonance and the sequel?
Yeah, I perfect. I appreciate it. I love this question always. So number one, authoraaronryan.com. If you go there, there are social media links. All of my tags are author Aaron Ryan wherever you look. But authoraaronryan.com has every book I've published, has my story, has fun facts, has a blog, active blog. You can subscribe there. Or if you're interested in only the trilogy and not me, that's fine. Okay. You can go to Dissonance, the series, not Dissidents, Dissonance, this, theseries.com. And there you'll find information specific to the trilogy, to the prequel of the trilogy that is now 126 pages. I think I'm into it for the prequel, and it's intense. Um, you can find all the information on the trilogy there. Now, on the shop page of dissonancetheseries.com, there are links to purchase directly from moi, signed copy, pen, bookmark, yay. Or there's links for each individual novel on Amazon for Kindle, paperback, hardcover, audiobook, and then all the other ones, the Kobo and the Barnes and Noble and the Smashwords and Trulia and Vivlio and Apple Books and all of those. So authoraaronryan.com, dissonancetheseries.com. There you go.
And I will link both of those down below in the description of this video. Make sure to give them a check out and be on the lookout too, because I will be doing a book impressions video where I'll be reading the first pages or possibly the first two chapters of Aaron's story and tagging it in this interview later down the line. And same thing with this interview, tagging it in the Wandering Quill Impressions video. So they'll both be linked. So when you watch one, you'll get the other. So be on the lookout for that. And again, listeners, thank you so much for joining us for my third author interview in a row. This week is going to be crazy, and next week is going to be even more crazy. But I love doing this. I love interviewing new authors, and I'm grateful that all of my subscribers, all 77 of you, have followed me up to this point. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all very much for joining us today. Again, a huge thank you to our guest, Mr. Aaron Ryan, for joining us and telling us about his passion, his series, and all the future prospects that we should look forward to him in. So, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And listeners, until next time, this has been The Wandering Scribe and The Wandering Quill signing out. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. And until next time, we will see you then.